to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. Welcome. It is Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. and I don't like to record this late, but I really felt like I needed to record and not skip it today. I have been feeling a little bit heightened symptoms vestibularly because I've been doing things like going in person to church and going to an in-person AA meeting. And I haven't done a lot of in-person things in a couple of years, so it's difficult. But being in this neighborhood, it takes away from the need to drive for 15 minutes to get anywhere. So we're like 5 minutes from everything that I could go to. And that's one of the reasons why we moved here, so that I can live better, live happier, do stuff, and still accommodate my, respect my chronic condition. So today I wanted to talk about living in the present moment. And this topic started out with my morning meeting this morning. We were talking about living in the present moment and how um, if we're looking at the past, we're living in fear. If we're looking towards the future, no, just kidding. Switch it. If we're living in the past, we're living in regret. If we're living in the future, we're living in fear. And to live in the present moment. And that really resonated with me today, because I was thinking about how much simpler, how much less drama exists in the present moment. And in sobriety, for those of you who are here, not because you are living a sober life or that's not your focus for being here, we have what we call emotional sobriety. And so sobriety is a lot more than just putting down the drink and becoming physically sober. There is something called emotional sobriety, and that's what working the steps is, the 12 steps, if you've heard of those. So what some of the things that I talk about a lot here with regard to emotional sobriety are things like acceptance and willingness and facing our fears, taking action, all of that stuff. And there is so much that parallels sobriety with stroke recovery and living with a chronic illness, or chronic pain or chronic pain. So I wanted to see if there might be a way to translate that over to stroke and vestibular recovery, stroke and or vestibular recovery. There's a lot of stuff, but it's all about recovery. It's all about facing something that is life altering, facing a health challenge that is life altering, and needing to recreate a balance and serenity and finding joy, having clarity on what it is that you're dealing with, and knowing how to accept it, how to adapt to it, and how to find renewed hope daily with it, despite it. So, for me, there has just been so much similarity between when I first got sober and I recognized that my life was unmanageable and I couldn't continue to live that way, that I was so broken. I was emotionally and spiritually broken. Never mind the physical part, the slow suicide that I was doing by constantly just having alcohol in my body 24/7. But when I had my stroke, and yes, it took me 2 years to accept the to accept the fact that my stroke changed my life. And I wasn't willing to accept that. I was trying to adapt. That's what it felt like in my head. I was trying to adapt my life to living with chronic pain. I wasn't doing anything to minimize the pain. I just thought the pain would go away on its own because that's what pain does. I mean, throughout my life, I'm 51 now. Throughout my life, like you have a headache, you take some Advil and it goes away. Or you hurt your ankle and you rest it and it goes away. It gets better. Maybe you need some physical therapy, but it gets better. And what happened after my stroke is that I developed a vestibular condition that did not get better. No matter what I did, no matter how much I rested, no matter how much vestibular therapy I took, nothing changed. It is a chronic condition. That includes pain. So I have chronic head pain that, depending on what I'm exposed to, it shows itself in layers. So it may be just a headache, just a headache. It may be a headache. It's not just a headache. It may be a headache. It may be get worse and become like sharp pains. The sharp pains can exist anywhere around my head, behind my eyes. And then if I continue to be exposed to whatever this environment is that's causing the problem, and typically it's correlated with seeing things that move and bright lights or bright lights or not bright lights. Anything that it's visual stimulation, it causes everything to heighten for me. And if all of that continues to heighten, then I will start having a difficult time finding words, difficult time remembering what I'm saying, and even get to the point where I'm saying a sentence and then all of a sudden it's gone. I can usually tell now, because I guess I've been dealing with this for 4 years. I can usually tell when I'm about to forget what I'm saying, if that makes sense. There's something that I feel happening. It's like this dark cloud or this foggy, dense cloud moves right into my brain and it covers up everything that I was just saying and I can't remember. And I can feel it coming. I can feel it coming into my head and I can't stop it. And all of a sudden, poof, I can't remember what I'm saying. I can't remember what I was talking about. And it's about 50-50 whether I can pick back up, like if it'll come to me or not. Everybody forgets what they're saying or forgets what they're talking about. This is an exaggerated version of that. This is like somebody just a little elf crawled into my brain and hijacked it and won't give it back. And sometimes he will give it back and sometimes he won't. And sometimes I just have to, over the past 4 years, I've had to get to this point where I'm like, I don't feel stupid that I forgot what I was saying. I don't feel stupid that I can't keep my train of thought going. That's taken a lot of practice too. In early stroke recovery, I was still working at this time. I was asked to do the steps, to host or chair the steps at the Monday morning AA. No, that's not true. At the Monday evening 5:30 meeting at Club 12. It's the drive-in group in Leesburg, Virginia. And so I would start off the meeting and talk about my experience with the step. So each week I would do a different step. And Wait a minute. No, that was a different time. Sorry, this is live action. So what it was I was asked to share at a meeting for a friend of mine who was celebrating his anniversary. Sorry, my memories are jumbled. Um, so I had already had my stroke. I was dealing with this. I was way, way worse as far as forgetting what I was saying and that kind of thing. And I stood in front of the group and I could barely talk. It was humiliating. It was so humiliating because I couldn't think of sentences. I couldn't think of words. I think it's because um, having already had an impact to my cognitive language and memory from my stroke, the stress of being in front of people heightened it. And then at that time, I wasn't aware of my vestibular disorder yet. So I was living with the vestibular disorder for 2 years and not knowing why my vision was doing what it was and why my head would start hurting in certain situations. And in that situation, it was like the perfect storm. And I couldn't put a cohesive thought together, and it was really, really difficult for me. But you know, if you're going to get vulnerable, an AA meeting is the best place to do it. The absolute best place to do it. Everybody was so encouraging. I wanted to run out of that room. I did. I almost stood up and was like, I can't do this. But everybody was just so supportive, and I tried to explain to them what was happening, but it was really hard. It's all a blur for me. Um, so this is the type of chronic condition that I live with, and I I went to a vestibular disorder meeting, support group meeting today, this afternoon, and I listened to everybody, and there was a lot of people. I was really happy that I was there because there was a lot of people talking about the topic was grief, and the topic was living with this grief or trying to get through the grief to acceptance that our life is never going to be the same because a lot of us, I think, go in there. We all have the cause of our vestibular condition is different, all of us. And the symptoms of our vestibular condition are different for all of us as well. Some of them are similar, and some of them are worse for me than they are for others. And then some of them have different symptoms that I don't experience at all. Like I don't have issues. I don't I don't feel like the world is moving all the time. I see the world as it is. It's just when things move, it hurts my head. So, and everything moves. I mean, if you think about it, everything moves. So, I, one of the reasons why we moved to this new house is because we're now in a neighborhood where not a lot of stuff moves. It's a little slower down here. We're a little more south, and there's not a lot of cars on the road, and I get to go outside on our back patio and there's just trees, and it's nice and peaceful, and visually it's peaceful for me as well. So all that being said, there is this level of acceptance that has to happen in order to start moving forward, to really progress into healing. And what I heard today from a couple individuals in the meeting was that every day is hard. And And what I heard was that these folks were challenged with finding any joy in their life. And I was compelled, albeit late, I was still compelled to share. So I was the last person to raise my hand after like 2 hours of being in the meeting. I love that the meeting stays open for as long as needed. But I raised my hand and I was compelled to talk about my experience as as an alcoholic. I do talk about it in there. I talk about it wherever it applies, and it tends to apply a lot of times. I don't I don't know if it makes other people uncomfortable. I don't really care if it makes other people uncomfortable because it needs to be said that emotional sobriety is something that I have to work at every single day. And there's been, oh gosh, years of all those years are filled with days that are filled with moments that are filled with choices where I get to choose between fear and acceptance. I get to choose between a reaction and a response, meaning, am I going to just do snap reactions to things, or am I going to respond? And my sobriety program teaches me how to respond, how to pause and respond. And how does that apply to what I deal with today? Like, I have to pause and really think about if I start feeling a little sad or a little self-pity, I pause and think about what can I do to respond to myself? What can I do to help myself right now? A lot of times the answer is to pick up the phone, but sometimes it's record my podcast. Sometimes it's take my dog for a walk. There's lots of ways that I can turn that fear into action. And as long as I'm living in the present, so this comes back to the topic, as long as I'm living in the present, it diminishes some of that fear of the future. Before we got to this house, and I still feel it. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I make these choices every day. I still do. It's been 4 years of living with this chronic illness, living with a headache every day of my life. Since June of 2021, I have had a headache, and it hasn't gone away, and it's not going to go away. It's not going to go away. I do have ways that I can manage it. And as long as the future for me is even 5 minutes from now. And I can't even live in 5 minutes from now. I need to live in the present moment, right here, right now. Because if I start thinking about, well, what am I going to do 5 minutes from now? Then I immediately think, well, what am I going to do tonight? What am I going to do tomorrow? Like, that's that little elf that hijacks my brain. It hijacks my ability to stay in the present moment. And the same thing happens not so much with my chronic illness, but with the sobriety side of it is living in the past. The same thing can happen if we deal with like guilt from living in the past. So the same principle applies to chronic illness. Like, peace comes serenity. I like to call it serenity because my sobriety program, it promises there's a a list of promises from the sobriety program, and one of them says, "We will know serenity," and I do. I have worked the steps to the point where I have reached a moment in my life where nothing was wrong. That is serenity to me, where I'm not worried about anything. I'm living right where my feet are. My head is where my feet are, and nothing is wrong. Nothing is bothering me. And the only way that I was able to get to that point was to work the steps, to confront my fears, talk to somebody about them. And for me, I also need a outside professional help. So it's not enough for me to go to support group meetings and have a sponsor and all that stuff. I need the extra. I need to go the extra mile. I need to talk to a professional, and I've always needed that. And it takes a lot of courage to pick up the phone and make an appointment. But once I do, it it really, I don't know, I just live better. That's the best way I can put it. But living with this chronic illness, I felt myself sinking because I what I didn't recognize that I was doing was, or I did recognize that I kept telling my psychiatrist, like, I can't I can't envision my future. I don't know what's going to happen. That's what I kept telling her. She's like, well, you never knew what was going to happen. And I'm like, no, but with when I didn't have this disability, I could plan for and work towards getting promoted at work, or I'm going to work this hard so that I can save this money so that I can buy a car or something like that. But with this chronic condition, ever since my stroke, it was like, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna be like in order to plan anything. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to work again. Like this was during, um, so I worked for 2 years and then I had to medically retire. I went on long-term disability. And then eventually I went on Social Security disability. When all the medical doctors and Social Security recognize that I can't work. There's nothing I can do. And believe me, if there was something I could do, I would do it. What I can do is record this podcast. That's what I can do, and I don't get paid for it. But the payment is spiritual, and the payment is connection with other people. The payment for me is giving back to others, and by giving back, I am getting so much, knowing that I might just help one person. And I know that because I have had multiple one persons reach out to me and tell me how I have helped them. So my goal has been achieved over and over again. And I'm not going to let that be the end. This serenity that I have been able to find in sobriety is something that I have to work very hard at maintaining in recovery, in stroke recovery. And the there are so many different ways that different things that I can, I don't know, exercise in order to have that serenity, but it's not constant. Again, I'm just being honest, like there are some days that are just hard days, and I'm just trying to maintain um, low enough symptoms that I can do something like make dinner, or that I can walk my dog over to the beach down the street in my new neighborhood. And that alone, walking my dog down to the beach, that is, you know how I've talked about the spoon and cup theory, and there's only a certain amount of spoons that we have every day. Well, I know that walking my dog to the beach takes a spoon, but what I haven't had to deal with until we moved here is that being at the beach takes a spoon because the water is moving, right? The water is moving. Some days it's moving more than others. So some days are harder than others. Some days it takes two spoons for me to be at the beach with my dog. And the beach, what I'm talking about, it's really a park that overlooks the water, and there's a little bit of sand over in the corner. So don't think it's a big, big fantastic beach or anything. Um, but I have to look forward. I really have to plan out my day as far as that's not normal. People who don't have a chronic condition don't have to lay their day out in a way where they're figuring out how many spoons are going to be taken up by each thing that we do. Typically, I mean, I remember before my stroke, I had my day and I would plan it out, and I would plan it out on the calendar. I plan out my day according to time. What can I fit into my day? What can I do to fit in everything that I want to or need to do into a day? But now there is another layer, another factor that has to be involved in planning out my day. And that is not only how much time do I have in the day, but what's more important is how many spoons is each thing going to take from me? How much energy is each thing going to take from me? And when I first started seeing my psychiatrist, she was trying to encourage me to have one or two things scheduled for the day. And I had like 3 to 5 things scheduled for the day because that's how I used to live before my stroke. And the weeks went by, we had little sheets that I would fill out for goals, for like daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, and yearly goals. And what she finally helped me see was that I am not the same person I used to be. And that is not something that I need to mourn, although I have mourned it for a long time. And I think the only way through the mourning is through the mourning. That's the only way to do it, is to actually show up for yourself. And if you want to cry that you're not the same person, cry because you're not the same person. But what I would recommend is crying with somebody, letting somebody know, talking about it. And that's what I was sharing in the vestibular support group today. When I finally raised my hand, I'm like, sometimes we can't do it alone. We don't have to do it alone. We can, help is only a phone call away. And it's a survival skill to ask for help. And a lot of us, prior to having a chronic condition or stroke or sobriety, have never had to ask for help. Or even if we should have asked for help, we wouldn't do it because we're independent. Like I was raised to be as independent as possible until I recognized that my own independence was what was hurting me. And instead of actually doing something about my fear and my anxiety and all of these things, I would just think about it. I would have wishful thinking. And all that did was increase my anxiety about what the future held because I couldn't do all the things that I wanted to do. Um, it it seemed to scream to me, this is everything you want and you're not going to have it, if that makes sense. So, the growth in recovery is in the present moment. Growth never happens from looking back, and growth doesn't happen from looking forward. Growth happens from living through what's happening right this very moment. And by showing up, by hitting play and listening to some chick, that's me, talk about living in the moment and sobriety and vestibular recovery and stroke recovery. You're sitting here and you're in the moment and you're growing. For just the 30 minutes or however long this episode's going to be, you are here and you are growing. And you're not thinking about the past and you're not thinking about the future. You're thinking about right now. And there is so much power in presence. Um, know that when you hear it all the time, mindfulness, which I get kind of tired of hearing the word mindfulness. All it means is to pay attention to what you're doing when you're doing it. If you're going to be in a meeting, be in the meeting. If I'm going to go to a sobriety meeting, like in the mornings, I go to 2 sobriety meetings every morning on Zoom. If I'm going to do that, then my head needs to be in the meeting. And I do that by taking notes and journaling through the meeting. But I'm not I'm not journaling about what I'm going to do today or journaling about my conversation that I had with my husband last week or anything. I'm journaling about how the topic of the meeting is affecting me in that very moment. And every day I tell them in the meetings, like, we do read the same stuff over and over again every year, but I hear it differently and it elicits different emotions every time I hear it. I feel something different. And that daily practice of showing up continues to change and improve my emotional sobriety and my wellness and my ability to stay in the moment. Being in the moment with a bunch of other people who are in the moment, there's nothing like it. That connection can calm any kind of mental chaos. And for us to all be together and share the human condition is, again, there's nothing like it. Like, growth happens quietly. Growth happens when we don't expect it. We can't see it happening. But when I stop and when I stop and I hear the words that are coming out of my mouth, I'm like, good on you. I hear the change coming through me. I talk every so often about how that first podcast episode and how much fear and pain I was in is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I felt I thought that I was dying. I did. I thought that I was dying. And it felt like I was dying because that's what our emotions can do to us. Like, if I don't manage my emotional sobriety, and I wish there was another word for it that I could relate it to the the feeling when I feel acceptance and hope and joy in stroke recovery. It's not, I mean, I can translate it into emotional sobriety, but it's just it's acceptance, it's opening the door to serenity, peace, possibility. Um, it thrusts me into that willingness that helps me to take a step forward, to transform my pain into purpose. It's me showing up every day. Um, the present moment is the space where I feel the safest. It's the place where I feel the most healing. I feel serenity and I feel emotional strength when I just stay right here where I am right now. And and this is where if I can if I can maintain or even grow in my emotional sobriety, then it also impacts my spiritual growth. And what I think is really unbelievable is how it affects my physical growth. When I recorded that first episode of my podcast, I said I felt like I was dying. I was dying. I was emotionally and spiritually dying. I didn't have any hope for my future. I couldn't live anywhere but in the past, in who I used to be, and in the future of who I'm never gonna be. And going to my support group meetings, going to a psychiatrist, those have helped me be able to get back to the present, to get back to living with emotional sobriety. And despite my chronic illness, despite being a stroke survivor, um, they have allowed me to start living fully again today. And even when I say I'm living fully, I know it looks different than it used to. Um, and as I said, I'm not done mourning. I'm not done mourning who I wanted to be that I'm never going to be. But things are okay. When I think about the present, when I stay in the present, I'm able to say things are okay right this minute. I learned that in my sobriety as well. Instead of saying, Rachel, everything's going to be okay. You just keep doing this, you keep doing that, everything's going to be okay. That is not the way that I want to live. I don't want to live saying to myself, everything is going to be okay. I have to live in the present. And that means that everything is okay right this moment. And believing that this moment holds purpose for me and practicing patience I learned in church on Sunday about how, and I've learned it often in my sobriety, how things that are happening in God's time may not be happening in my time. And that's where I practice patience. And that patience, that patience is existing in this very moment. And when I'm practicing patience and presence and believing that this very moment holds purpose, then I'm growing in this very moment. I'm growing. So I hope this was helpful, and it was certainly helpful to me. I needed it. I needed it. You know, the words may be coming out of my mouth, but sometimes I don't even believe I'm the one saying it, but it's very helpful. So we're all growing together, and I really appreciate you coming and joining me for this journey that we're all on. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.